MultimediaJay radio style, now officially gluten-free. Hey, wait a minute. This is a recording thingy. It's not even food. How is... You know what? Heck with it. Thanks for listening, folks. Whatever.
MultimediaJay radio style.
Okay, we are stopping everything to jump on the microphone and talk about some stuff that I need to totally let off some steam about when it comes to this scooter thing and the whole scooter thing that I made fun of with that random-ass video on Leap Day earlier this week, as well as the whole idea of what's going on with the whole scooter thing in a very podcasty fashion. Although I can't vouch for the good recording conditions of this place because I'm having a bit of trouble with old Clunky tonight, so it might make a little bit of noise to try and get into the recording. There also seem to be, it's not Thursday or anything, I don't know why it's like this on a Wednesday night, but there also seems to be a decent amount of garden variety idiots blowing up and down the roads. Maybe they completely forgot that this neighborhood is between the police station and a Dunkin' Donuts. Figure that one out, why don't you? But anyways, so yeah, if you hear any sirens, maybe we should all do a round of applause because there's people that are blowing by on the various streets in the area and making this otherwise quiet neighborhood a little on the noisy side tonight. So whatever, I'm gonna get done saying all of this, and like a train's gonna go through. We're gonna hear the train horn, even though we're all the way across town. So, if you hear a train horn, the odds are it's a real train, and not some idiot with a train horn in their car. Likewise, there's an air horn at the fire station. So I thought somebody was like, why are they blowing off air horns at 10:45 at night? Oh, wait, fire station. I'm used to the fire departments having sirens instead of horns. That's what the issue is. But we got to talk about this whole thing with alternative transportation, which really should not be alternative in the first place. I specifically want to bring down the hammer on this idea of so-called kiddie transportation. I've rebounded relatively well from the little wipeout yesterday. I still have all the marks and stuff like that, but things don't hurt as much as they did around this time last night. However, I was talking about it at work. I did manage to get some folks to crack up about it, including the HR hippie. So he's over here, oh man, what happened? He's like, I had wiped out on the commuter scooter yesterday afternoon. I skinned both knees, skinned a hand, cuts, bruises, and dings and scratches all over the place, but at least I wore my helmet. He was like, ho, 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 ho. Well, something like that. Anyways, I don't want to make fun of the guy or anything too much on here. He's got enough people in the office that make fun of him as it is for his happy-go-lucky attitude, but I guess he's supposed to be the people person of the bunch, so him being all cheery and stuff like that, I imagine is probably something that comes with the turf, considering his line of work. However, I did get a little bit of awkwardness from the supervisor I was talking to when I mentioned, yes, they do make adult commuter scooters. They have bigger wheels than those little things the kids ride around on, so they're made to go over small bumps and things. It's not that I was fiddling around with an adult commuter scooter that's the reason why that mess yesterday happened. It's because I got too aggressive when I was testing the friction brake on a steep hill. Really what I should have done is jam that thing into the wheel, came to like a halt or slowed down enough to get off and then walk down the hill if I don't think, if it's too steep to roll down. Or go to the bike shop and put a handbrake on that thing. It's not that hard. There are people that actually mod these things. It's just the whole thing with scooters being kids' toys. This is the sort of thing, yeah, well, maybe out here in the woods where you just, you have your kids doing laps around a little side street or something like that, if there even is a side street in the first place, so there's not much traffic. But you start looking on YouTube, you see people overseas who are riding bikes to work, and I'm not talking like motorcycles. You say you ride a bike to work here, people assume you have a hog or a jetpack? What the? A hog or a speed bike or something like that. It basically means motorcycle. You go over to certain parts of continental Europe, and biking to work literally means a bicycle. And there's better infrastructure for it. You know, I think a third of the Netherlands doesn't drive or something like that. I've seen the videos. Here are these people on bicycles in the snow with studded ice tires commuting to work in the middle of winter. And now you consider the whole fat bike phenomenon in the last couple of years. I want to get a fat bike because I want biking to be an option if I wimp out on driving in the snow in the wintertime. You know, it'll definitely look like, you know, keep a global perspective. Isn't that what business wants folks to do these days or something like that? It was a big thing people said when I was in college, but yeah, whatever. So yeah, the whole thing with, I mean, you go over to certain parts of the world and biking through the snow on a fat bike is basically a recreational thing. And, yeah, that's what fat bikes are made for. Snow, sand, the fat ass tires tend to float a little more whereas the other stuff, you know, tends to cut into it and be harder to ride and things like that. But it's definitely something that I want to consider. Even if it's a Mongoose Dolomite Walmart special piece of junk, a fat bike is definitely another way I can get more exercise. And that's the thing. We here in the United States, with our problems with carbon emissions, with our problems with obesity, with our problems with traffic and congestion and road rage and you name it, with all of our problems here in the U.S., we take every single form of transportation smaller than a motorcycle and utterly and completely either emasculate it to where you're some kind of nerd, wimp, geek, dweeb, whatever, or we relegate it to children's toys. Why? That's my question. The Razor A5 Lux is not a children's scooter. It's made for people that are up to 220 pounds. And I've heard all kinds of stories about people that are a little above that, maybe even notably above that, still able to ride those things without breaking them. Maybe that 220-pound weight limit has to do with doing tricks on it or something, if you want to be like the kids flipping around on their scooters in like the streets and stuff. Hopefully little side streets without much for traffic, but yeah, the Razor A5 Lux is not a kid's toy. It may be $60-70 at Walmart, but it's not a kid's toy. No, and if you go, I mean, I turn heads when I talk about, because these, you know, I'm a big internet nerd and stuff like that. Not everybody sits home watching YouTube instead of whatever's on cable these days. However, well, Netflix too. I gotta go watch Fuller House now that I'm hearing all these great things about it. I used to like Full House back in the day. Well, back in the day, I could barely understand half the jokes that weren't for kids because of kind of, yeah. Okay, enough dating myself. But anyways, but yeah, I mean, we take transportation for anything that is not at least a motorcycle, and we either emasculate it to where there's something wrong with you if you use it, or we relegate it to children's toys. Why? We have problems with traffic in this country. We have problems with the cost of owning a car in this country. We have problems with not enough mass transit. We have problems with carbon emissions and the greenhouse effect and carbon footprints and all that stuff the tree huggers like to fire off about. We have problems with obesity and healthcare costs, and yet we take something so basic and we trivialize it. If I don't have to leave town, why on earth should I even bother with the car? When there's so many people getting in each other's way and making each other mad on the roads as it is. You go downtown around the time people are trying to go home from work or go shopping or whatnot, it's a disaster. It's an absolute disaster. And you see people complain on social media, local news outlets, newspapers, radio, things like that. People go wherever they can let off steam and they scream and holler about the traffic problem. But an adult commuter scooter is a kiddie toy. Here's what this town should do. Take some pork barrel whatever project, can it, and take that money and put it towards smoothing out the sidewalks and amending the sidewalk ordinance to allow for more alternative transportation. Likewise, with the wider roads, make the breakdown lane serve as like a small bicycle lane, maybe, if there's nobody broken down in it or something, or using it to parallel park. It's something to consider. But, I mean, this is America being completely and totally stuck in the 50s. In case anybody forgot, the 50s were over half a freaking century ago, okay? The big, loud muscle cars and the Chevys at the time and the Fords and the Packards and things like that. Studebakers, were they still around? I don't know. Anyways, the big classic cars and everything, and most importantly, the development of teen culture. And this whole thing where getting your driver's license is like a rite of passage as you're growing up. That's all rooted in post-war post-war teen culture, right? Somewhere along that line, we made driving a car everywhere into a status symbol. Yet if you actually rewind the clock only 10 years from the 1950s, go back to World War II and read some of the Allied propaganda posters that were being posted around in the United States when we were fighting the Nazis and the Japanese in World War II. You know, there was a poster that said, "When you ride alone, you ride with Hitler." Now there's an attitude. That's quite an attitude when it comes to driving a car around. When you ride alone, you ride with Hitler. A reference to the war shortages at the time and the rationing that was going on to help fuel the war effort in Europe and eventually the Pacific Front as well. So, Pacific Theater, I should say. That's quite an about-face, don't you think? We accused people who drove around by themselves in their cars in the 40s during the war of being, like, in league with Nazis. And then 10 years later, suddenly it's this big rite of passage when you can cruise around town. That's quite a change. And unfortunately, it was not for the better. Because now we have a nation of people who have to actually think about alternatives to driving everywhere. Now, it makes sense in, like, suburbia or something. I'm going to jump in the SUV, go to work, and stop at Walmart on the way home. But if you're just going from point A to point B, why do you need to move something that big, that expensive to insure, things like that? Why do you need that? But this is the question that we as Americans did not properly answer when the SUV fad was still a thing, and GM. Wow. I had a long day at work. Sorry about that. And GM gave up on I believe they gave up on the EV1 in order to support the Hummer, right as the SUV fad was taking off. People were caricaturing it and making fun of it in just a couple of years in the early 2000s. The Ford Excursion is practically a cartoon of an SUV, kind of just taking everything about the excess of the pre-$2 a gallon gas coming out of the Clinton years and just going to town with it. I had a friend in college. He was from a rich family. He had money to burn. He drove around in one of those things. He called it the sex excursion, even though he never really, I don't think he ever actually had a steady girlfriend. I think he just went to the club with a bunch of people, but he used to joke about his Ford Excursion being the sex excursion. Even as he was, guzzling gas in that thing to the tune of what? I think the thing got like 9 miles a gallon. It's just like, wow. Yeah. And then, of course, we had cash for clunkers and the crap when the gas prices shot through the roof and the value of SUVs plummeted. So, we just got done with a financial crisis, underwater houses, and now there were underwater SUVs, right as people were trying to be more fuel efficient with $4 a gallon gas. Yeah. So, yeah. Can we start rethinking this whole kiddie transportation thing sometime soon? Can we start reconsidering all of this? Because you can't have your cake and eat it too. I mean, there's people complaining about too much traffic. Okay. Do you actually need to drive from point A to point B where you're going? Are you leaving town and hopping on the interstate? If the answer is no, and you're just going downtown for something, holy crap, what is wrong with us? But now let's talk about the practicality and why specifically I went scooter first. Okay, let's start with what's socially acceptable if you're not driving everywhere and contributing to traffic problems, carbon emissions problems, the obesity epidemic because you've got your ass parked in your car instead of doing something to try and, move yourself. So let's say you get a bike. The socially acceptable method of self-powered transport, as Mr. Blunty called it in his video, which I've watched numerous times as kind of like motivation to keep doing this. Okay, you ride from point A to point B. Now, what do you do when you get at your destination and you want to go in the store? Look like an idiot wheeling your bike in after you? No, you got to find somewhere to chain the darn thing. So, yeah, unless it's got a bike rack, and I don't see a lot of stores with bicycle racks around here, You got to find a tree, a telephone pole, something that won't get you a ticket, hopefully, and then get a bike lock and do all that mess and things like that. So with the commuter scooter, especially the one that I have, which has the backpack strap on it, you shut it and then wear it. You just, I mean, what I have is so bizarre anyways that most of the stores that I could walk into around here actually, none of the stores around here even sell the Razor A5 Lux, which would be the most popular of the entry-level commuter scooters. You don't see them in the stores. You only see the children's versions of the scooters. So if the loss prevention of the department stores threw a hissy fit, you could say, hey, you don't sell these things in your stores. Neither does any of your competitors. Neither does anyone around here. I had to buy this darn thing off of Amazon.com. Thank you very much. But here's the thing. Those things would be sold in stores if there was more of a demand for them. And you see where I'm going with this? Imagine if we had people who saved their cars and all the wear and tear, and the IRS estimated 55 cents a mile wear and tear cost and depreciation. Imagine if people saved the cars for the trips when they actually needed to haul something, like a load of groceries, or they needed to actually leave town, or it was raining out or something like that. Heck, there's people that bike in the rain, for crying out loud. But imagine if something like that came up, right? Imagine if people were like that. What kind of traffic congestion could we see go away because of that? What kind of greenhouse issues could go away as a result of that? And how much weight would people lose? I mean, I watch these YouTube guys. They're talking about how they changed to bicycle commuting and they lost 100 pounds just going back and forth to work. There's your recommended exercise for the day and your weight loss. They lost 100 pounds just because they started biking to work. And here I am thinking of getting a fat bike to ride year-round, even on tar, which is, I understand, is notably harder than riding a regular bike. So I probably will most likely get a workout, not only from the fat bike, but just from getting my fat ass back onto a bike for the first time since I was a teenager to begin with. So it's guaranteed to be a calorie burner. Not only that, it'll be practical exercise. The stuff that you don't skip because you want to do it in order to not put the wear and tear on the car. To not risk a car accident, having to mess with repairs and things like that. You know, the most you'll do is bump into something on a bike with a 3-digit price tag instead of a car with a 4 or 5-digit price tag. Yeah. Things like that. Yeah, I mean, the more you think about it, and especially the more you watch these YouTube videos of people doing these things like scooter commuting in cities, even if they look silly with their suits and ties on their little kick scooter, when the traffic's backed up and everything's bumper to bumper and there's horns going everywhere and they're just scootering along on the sidewalk or something like that, maybe not as fast as it would be if they had some room in the road or a bicycle lane to go on, but it's... I don't mean to make a reference to that Office Space joke where the old lady with the walker goes faster than the cars that are stuck in traffic, but it's just kind of like a less extreme version of that. But yeah, kiddie toys, these adult commuter scooters ain't, no matter how bad that grammar happens to be. As far as mine is, hey, I might even start a scooter collection. You know, I might just stick to just one bike, just for the heck of it, get one fat bike and call it a day, and then just go all scooters for the rest of everything else. Maybe even get one with an electric motor that I could use to ride uphill. Get a few free hills out of the deal, because that's currently what I'm doing. The way I actually handle my commuter scooter is it's basically pedestrian plus plus. I'm already a fast walker to begin with. My nickname at the warehouse fiasco job was Mr. Energy, and I still wear the same shoes. I still wear the same kinds of shoes. I wear Caterpillar men's Ridgemont soft toe work shoes nowadays. It's got a ton of Goodyear rubber on the bottom. With the right insoles, these work shoes are the single best walking shoes that I've ever worn in my life. They're a little on the heavy side, but, you know, I zipped around concrete at the warehouse jobs with those things, so, yeah, and what are roads and sidewalks? They're concrete! Put them together. Duh! So you figure I'm already used to being a speed walker, so I can do that uphill, and then I can take a break and just roll down anything that's downhill. And there's plenty of hills here in New England. So, and actually, as I get better at this, I might actually try scooting uphill. If I can find a way to make it faster than I would be speed walking, then it's more worth it to roll. Otherwise, convert to pedestrian mode. Likewise, if there's a bad patch of sidewalk that the town hasn't kept all smooth and stuff, I don't want to risk wiping out or breaking the scooter going over ginormous bumps. So I'll just often, if I see a rough patch coming up, I'll stop, get off, convert back to pedestrian mode, and then reconvene with the wheels once I'm on the other side of the rough patch. However, I also could just, pick the thing up and toss it over my shoulder without folding it up, or I can just walk the thing like I'm walking a bicycle anyways. Not like the thing's all that heavy to push anyways. So, yeah, it's something to consider. And it all helps to, number one, I'm a fat ass. I need more exercise. It helps to that end. My doctor's been all over me. Hey, find some way to get some more exercise that you'll actually stick to. So yeah, it's exercise that I need anyways. There's people complaining about too much traffic in this town, and quite frankly, unless I actually had to make a run to a store or something like that, I really don't need to be driving around when I'm not leaving town. Save the car for when I want to go somewhere that's more woodsy, or when I actually want to go somewhere beyond the town, the city limits, or whatever you want to call them. And this place isn't exactly big enough to be totally considered a city, but town line, boundaries, whatever, yeah. And then, of course, you don't have to hunt for a place to park, because when you get to roughly where you want to go, you just fold the thing up and start wearing it. And hopefully you don't get too many weird looks because you have this big metal thing with wheels on your back. Like I did when I rode it to the supermarket earlier this afternoon. I did get a few things. Not very many. I was experimenting with hanging the plastic shopping bag off the bars on the way back up, and actually it stays on the bars if I fold it up, so I just carried both when I switched back to walking mode. But we need to get past this whole kiddie transportation thing, because it's just not so. There's all kinds of problems in this country that being smarter with how we get around can help address. Part of being smarter, though, means that society needs to ditch these stereotypes once and for all. I mean, yeah, in the 1950s, we made a big deal out of driving in cars everywhere you go. But you only need to go back 10 years before people driving around in cars all by themselves, not with anybody or anything in the car, were accused of being sympathetic to the Nazis during World War II. That was quite a different change of attitude and hasn't been for the better. So, thanks for listening, everybody. This is MultimediaJay Radio Style. Don't touch that dial.